Okay, so today's topic for the podcast is surviving the most unprecedented year in e-commerce. So before we dive into the questions, I think we can just go through the group and tell us a little bit more about yourself and how you fit into this.
Okay, so I'm Jaco. I'm from uAfrica. I'm the technical director. I look after all the tech that we build, being a technology company. Yep, that's what I do.
So I am Anita Erasmus. I'm also from uAfrica, and I'm the business manager. So basically I look after everything that Jaco is not looking after. That's my responsibility. So everything non-tech.
I'm Etienne. I'm from Soviet Denim. I'm the e-commerce and digital marketing manager there. So anything online to do with Soviet, my role, even though Soviet has wholesale, retail, a whole bunch of divisions, I'm pretty much the online guy.
Cool. Alright, so if we look back to what happened a year ago, it was the pandemic had finally arrived in South Africa. We knew it was coming. March 2020, we went into a hard lockdown, what we now refer to as level 5. Everyone was forced to stay home. You literally had to have a permit to leave your house, or if you needed to perform essential services. You could only actually sell anything if you were selling essential goods, and there was no sale of alcohol or cigarettes. So e-commerce was essentially shut down and South Africa was at a standstill. So what were your initial thoughts when all of this happened? Maybe Anita, we can start with you.
Yeah, taking me back. I just think initially it was obviously for everybody, we kind of knew it was coming. It happened in other countries, we were warned, but typical human being behavior until, it was announced, like, okay, I realized this is really a big thing. So I think for us, before you started thinking about how it was going to change our business, I think the initial thought was just, okay, what changes should we make internally? Like, how are we going to keep our people safe? How are we going to get them to work remotely? So I think that was the initial thinking especially from like my position, is how are we going to do that? And I think after that was done, we kind of realized, okay, well, this is really going to have a massive impact on business in general, not just necessarily us.
Now that had a natural overflow to tech as well, because we had to set up everybody to work from home. Had to get fiber and mobile connections to everybody. And I think there's two aspects for me. Is one is in your private life, your family life, to make sure that how school's going to go, how's your family life going to go. And then from a business point of view is everybody needs to be remote. Luckily we're a tech company and everything can be remote, so that helped really for us in our sense. I don't know about your guys.
From our side, we weren't really prepared for a hard lockdown. I mean, we didn't have any sort of strategies in place for how we're going to keep things going. So we kind of just winged it, to be honest. But throughout the heavy lockdown, we learned a lot. So that was the positive. I mean, because we are online again, we could work digitally most of the time. The only restriction we had was the courier companies weren't working, so we could still make sales, we just obviously couldn't fulfill them and process orders and whatnot. So for us it was more of a sense that, okay, online's the only thing that can make sales for the company. What do we do from here to try and make it work? So we kind of went on the fly with that, and yeah, it kind of turned out pretty good for us in terms of what we came out with at the end. But initially we weren't really prepared at all for a hard lockdown.
Yeah.
I remember on the first day we going through the regulations of what is essential and what is not essential, and being flooded with emails from all our customers of is my dog brush essential?
Yeah.
And it is people trying to justify, because everybody panicked, especially in e-commerce in the field that we were playing with, that they didn't know whether they are allowed to sell a water bottle for their dogs or a brush for their wife. So it's just understanding the complexity of what is allowed and what is not allowed, what is permitted to be sold, what is permitted by the couriers to be carried, what permits needs to be in place. And I think that was just a mess in the beginning. Everybody just...
But I mean, on that note, and I think that was what people don't always realize, is that everything was allowed to be sold on e-commerce, right? You could still sell, people could still buy whatever, the couriers weren't allowed to ship it.
Yep.
So obviously you need to communicate to your customers, you can still buy it, but you will only get it, once it opens up. And I think that is maybe where e-commerce really benefited. And that's from our side where we had the month of March, which was when everything opened, which was just, I can't swear, but it was,
It
yeah,
was just
it was difficult.
Yeah, I think you actually explained it perfectly. I think it all happened a lot quicker than we all thought it would. It was, the first case in South Africa, and the next thing, the country's closed essentially. So
there was no warning. It was just like
it's just what happened.
well, there was warning, but I mean, like Anita said, you are ignorant, and you feel it won't happen here. Although, I mean, it was picking up, and the cases were picking up, and then it was bam, level 5.
Yeah.
So it was a shock.
And I think the biggest thing was we all thought, okay, it's 3 weeks, it's not that much of an impact on the long term, strategy for the year. And then, when they extended those 3 weeks to even further, that's when companies started panicking a little bit and were like, okay, shucks, we actually need to put a proper strategy in place because we don't know how long this thing's going to last. So for us, a big thing for us was obviously people didn't have as much money as they used to because they bought TP and food and booze and whatever else they wanted to stock up on. And then for us, the tough thing was kind of, okay, we are in a clothing industry. People aren't really going to want to buy clothes or need clothes now. Everyone's in their homes. There's no one to look good for. You don't want to go out. There's nothing. So we really, focused on, instead of doing paid advertising and trying to reach out new, customers and gain new clientele, we just focused on our existing database that we had and just try to, look at things that would keep them busy because everyone's at home. You can't leave your house. So we just thought of interactive stuff and more brand-focused things to also just realize, when, if you don't do some type of manipulation with price or some promotion, what else does your brand stand for? That's kind of where we had to really rethink because we kind of got stuck in a big, price-sensitive market, especially in clothing, where you're just always pushing on price, trying to be cheaper than the next person with the same amount of quality, where, if all of that's equal and fair and there's COVID happening, what else sets the business apart? So we kind of had to dig deep into what we actually stand for and what we want to help our customers with. So that was a good thing for us with COVID to try and find it out.
You didn't change any of your products during this. You kept that the same.
We kept it the same also because we couldn't really create any new products. We added a couple face masks and stuff. But
that's more what I'm getting to, because a lot of our merchants started selling sanitizer and face masks.
There was a point where if you were early in that sort of market, you do well. But there was a point where literally everyone was selling masks and sanitizer. So we didn't focus all that much on it. we did it just to keep with the trends, but we didn't really focus on that, to be honest. But there are certain companies that I was sort of involved in on a sideline thing that got into the face mask thing pretty early, and they were doing super well, even without couriers, and that was the essential service at a stage as well. So they really had a good chance to start a business. Whether it's still as sustainable as it was back then, I'm not too sure, but initially in the beginning they made some good money.
I think face masks are so readily available. I stopped at a petrol garage yesterday and it was like a selection of masks. So I think it's all over the show at the moment. I think it was a wave, excuse the pun, but there was a wave in the beginning of masks and sanitizer.
Yes.
And I think there was cases where people used the alcohol from sanitizer to make alcohol to drink, and people actually died. So there was some experiments. Most definitely.
But for me, especially with the masks in the beginning, people were trying to have the best mask or the best sanitizer, and there was the masks with the air filter at a stage, and then everyone went with those because now you can breathe while having a mask and it still protects you. Where I think now we've kind of reached that stage where as long as you have a sanitizer and you have a mask, no matter what it is,
even a buff will do.
You're happy. So I think it was definitely just like a short-term craze, but it was definitely.
I think on a personal level as well, and family life. Luckily for me, being in a tech industry, our house was already set up for tech. But I think a lot of people ran around trying to get fiber and trying to get connected at home. because I think a lot of people, we work from home from time to time as well, and we were already set up for that. And I think my kids were already computer literate even before schooling started, going onto Microsoft Teams and Google Classroom. So I think that helped from a tech point of view. But a lot of people had to run
doesn't
around.
that also help us from the e-commerce side? Because, I mean, just thinking about our support people, they're all now set up, if
Yes.
needs be, with internet, working from home.
Yes.
But that allows them to, which most of them didn't, to go home and to be able to buy online because they didn't have internet. So I think just that in the long run is where a lot of people weren't set up. Yes, they might go back to the offices, but they now have internet at home, and I think that's where, from an e-commerce side, the consumer change was.
It created a whole new market and a whole new buyer group of people that never trusted it. My parents never bought online, and now they buy online. They trusted the system.
It was like a desperation act for a lot of people, where they're like, okay, well, the world's gonna end, might as well try online shopping.
It took us to that point to
it
get
took the end
people
of the
to do
world
all
for
the
people to try online shopping, but now I mean everyone's in agreement that it's kind of pushed us forward a good couple of years. So in the end, it's worked out good for most of us.
In hindsight, I think the guys that got caught out was liquor and vaping products, tobacco products.
Very much so.
I don't think they realized how long their lockdown would be.
Yeah.
The market opened up again eventually in May. Everybody sold their stuff, but I mean, the travel industry knew that it won't open up. But liquor and vape and tobacco products were really caught on. I think they didn't expect it.
Well, that sort of goes, what you've already said, it kind of goes into my next question, is when the economy sort of started slowly opening up again, there was a period of time where you could buy non-essential goods, but it was only on e-commerce where you could actually buy these goods. And you've said it already, where people they've been forced to buy online, they've been forced to, get set up at home. What else was there that you sort of noticed where, during this time period, where, you couldn't necessarily buy a piece of clothing in a store, but you could buy it online? What else was there that you sort of picked up from a business and personal perspective?
For me, it would be a lot to do, because obviously clothing company, we kind of had to just readjust a little bit with our returns policies and that sort of thing, just to be a bit more lenient, because we obviously have sort of lead times with everything, so we just cut those lead times to nothing. We just said there are no lead times, so if you buy something you can exchange it at any time you want, just to encourage spending. And then it was also just the sense of, again, clothing wasn't the biggest commodity when we were in hard lockdown, but people still bought surprisingly, not at the same levels, but we definitely saw, in terms of not so much sales, but our database grew quite a lot in that time, because we knew, we could interact with the people 24/7, because everyone was either on their phone or on the laptop or watching TV or something. So in terms of a marketing standpoint, we focused heavily on trying to, engage with our customers a lot more. So I mean, we did sort of digitally interactive stuff. So I mean, we did an Easter egg hunt on our website, for example, when it was hard lockdown. So it's just like, yes, there weren't the sales that we could have gotten in a normal month, but in terms of the database and the kind of engagement that we got in that month was probably more than we've had since. I mean, there's always a positive when it comes to that.
I actually listened to a podcast from Shopify, and they summed it up very well, where they said there's resilience versus resistance, and a lot of people showed resistance against this change, and they didn't do what you guys did, changing their business model, and a lot of customers went under, and a lot of guys were resilient in terms of changing their business model, starting to sell sanitizer and face masks, even though they were electronics still, just to make ends meet. And I really appreciate that part of entrepreneurs in South Africa, that they are hardened and they really want to do that.
What did that look like for uAfrica from new sign-ups perspective? Was there suddenly an increase in new online stores, or was that still too early in the process?
No, March was a dead month. There was nothing, and that picked up in May.
Okay.
So when it started opening up, there was a huge influx of
So we basically saw double the amount of trial accounts created. Obviously, it doesn't necessarily pick in the plan, but creating, which shows intent, was double the amount from, if you compare March. Obviously April you can't really compare, April was also quite up, but then May was massive.
The hard lockdown
of,
was throughout the whole April.
And I think that's where we benefited quite a lot. Our business model was set up that you could create an account, set up quite quickly, integrate your store, and you can literally just start shipping. And I think because it was all, so kind of everybody wanted to start quickly, we were in a very good space for that. You didn't have to go to courier, open up account, fill documentation in, wait a month for them to give you rates. With us, it's literally on the day that you create your trial, you can start shipping. And we benefit also a lot from being able to offer that to clients. And I think that's where we could have added value, or where we did add value.
Yeah.
A lot of people became entrepreneurs in March and April, and they all of a sudden people started asking, what actually does uAfrica do? And we gave them the ability to not ship, but to set up their accounts, set up their Shopify stores, set up their WooCommerce stores, and get set up for orders. Online marketing was still available, and people created a presence, and everybody, like you said, took orders. So
yeah, I think the big thing was sort of that full package. I mean, everyone that wanted to start something had no clue how to start it. So I mean, if you contact uAfrica, then at least it's coupled with a Shopify and with a PayFast. There's kind of that full 360 solution where people don't have to stress about, okay, how am I going to get payments, how am I going to set up a store. So I think just the fact that there's that kind of coalition between the three helped a lot of the smaller guys that want to help people set up and start up stores. It just made it super simple. I mean, also Shopify during that time had a time where you could have a free extended period with the trial store, your setup store. So I think in terms of the initiatives that Shopify especially took during that time helped a lot. They also kind of put in place those donations or putting in tips when you're at checkout, and just small stuff like that. Buying, gift cards is always available, but even that sort of thing just helped a lot. And we kind of also, on our side, we knew, so it's kind of in March for fashion at Soviet, that's when our new season kind of starts. So we missed out completely on our new season launch. So for us at least, we knew what products were coming in, even though we didn't have it, so we could always do sort of a pre-order initiative. So luckily for us, we were already in that space where we had planned so much content and so much sort of planning for our new season that we could just switch it from, okay, instead of it going in stores, push everything to online, make it pre-order. So for us, we at least had a chance.
Shopify's Future of E-commerce 2021 report reveals that at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, 10 years of e-commerce growth happened in just 90 days. That's hectic. Based on this, what does this look like now for South African e-commerce when you compare it to what it looked like before the pandemic? Okay, so before the pandemic, if you looked at e-commerce, this was the trend. Now, what does that look like for you?
Can I go? On a technical level, we couldn't see the spike of traffic that we got. It was massive in May. We see huge spikes usually on Black Friday and Cyber Monday, but on May it was just scaling up servers, and it was just crazy. I don't know, from a business point of view.
Yeah, I mean, it's contradicting saying putting like years to it, like 10 years. I mean, I think that's a bit of
hard to say.
It's like a headline in a sense that you want to make a headline. But there was obviously, I think, what we can maybe say from uAfrica side is that we were forced from a technical perspective as well from an ops perspective to scale quite quickly and to adapt quite quickly and to get our business ready in a sense for those kind of volumes. And I think with that, like we had to change, consumers also had to change, where they were forced to buy online. And where I think the very big change was, or just my opinion, is where people are buying non-essentials online. Like buying food online was definitely not a big trend before COVID, and I think that was a massive change, and even just buying essentials. So I think that is really where a very big change happened, and with that people became more comfortable buying online, they trust online more, and then they will buy their shoes online and their other things online. So it's all it was a forced habit change. And once you've done it once, you realize how convenient it is, and it forces you to adapt your daily way of buying.
I mean, Mr. D Food and Uber Eats and everything, all the local deliveries was there beforehand.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
it spiked tremendously. I mean, now you see motorcycles all over the show, just delivering locally. 60/60 is now a big thing. Woolies Dash is a big thing. So.
Well, 60/60 completely changed the way that we shopped during the holidays. We were in Ballito, Durban area over the December period where it was one of the hotspots, and we didn't leave the house for the simple reason that you actually just don't want to put yourself at risk. So we used only the Checker 60/60 app and had everything delivered. It was so convenient, and I'd never done that before.
Yeah.
It's completely changed the way that I do my grocery shopping now.
Precisely, yeah. And you were a very adamant, or what do you call it? Love online shopping. It's not as if you weren't buying online.
Exactly.
You just weren't buying that kind of products online.
Exactly.
So
We have to add that there was a big drive from us and especially Andy to talk to Adrian Patel to actually open up the courier services to non-essential goods. And we got a lot of signatures from all e-commerce and all courier companies and all stakeholders to actually open up e-commerce. And I think that helped a lot on opening up the market quicker and getting this boom. I don't know what you guys saw from your side.
I think we also saw the biggest sort of surge in terms of sales also in May.
Also in May. Yep.
May was also a big month where even though we were spending less in terms of ad spend and that sort of thing, we still doubled our revenues, month to month, comparing, 2019 against 2020. And then it was just also a thing of, we saw the older generation or older demographic buying from us also during that time, from March to May, maybe even June. So you can say, yes, our sales might have taken a hit, but the type of people that were buying were mostly the new consumer that hasn't bought online before. So for us, at least there was a bit of a sort of, market share that we haven't been able to get
But
before.
keeping the old customers?
The old customers eventually did come back. So obviously during that time we catered to a younger kind of client, sort of mid-20s, early 30s, not much older than that, but we saw more the parents and the older adults from like 35 to 45 buying from us during that hard lockdown stage, because they had the money. The younger people, didn't have all that much disposable income during that time. So we saw a big positive in that. And then sort of going forward, we talk about the food guys that did so well with their 60/60 and all of that. Even though it's not in our industry, we think it kind of broke barriers in terms of e-commerce in
trust.
general.
Yes.
So I mean, now that they've tried it, yes, not in the clothing side, but in a food side or whatever side, that at least sort of opened it up where they're like, okay, cool, I can trust e-com, I can order online. The courier companies are now sorted, because there was sort of a stage in South Africa where people didn't trust the courier companies all that much, even though the online sites and everything and the payment gateways were sorted. The courier was always a little bit behind the rest. So I think that kind of helped as well last year, where people could just trust the couriers to be like, okay, you know what, I am going to get my parcel in the time that it says. And even if I don't, or I don't like my product, 9 out of 10 stores offer free returns or a refund policy that's normal or comparable to stores. So I think that helped a lot.
A big surprise for me was the spike in clothing and apparel throughout the year, from May and even through Cyber Monday and Black Friday. I can't believe that that picked up so much. Everybody was against selling, or everybody said that clothing online is going to be a hard sell. But as people learned that the return policies are actually working and they can return stuff that doesn't fit, I think it boomed really well. So we saw that across all our merchants.
Luckily for us, even though it's Soviet denim, we have a large sort of footwear side of the business. So that's predominantly our business, actually, is footwear. So luckily with sizing, with footwear is a lot easier than when it comes to
Jeans,
shirts and
yeah.
jeans and that type of thing. So that helped us a lot. And then I mean there's places like Superbalist that have ridiculously good fit finders on their website.
They do. I actually tested last
Worked
night.
out
It was
like on the
amazing.
percentage based
Yes.
on other brands that you bought
Yeah.
before, what will fit you more
It's
or less.
amazing.
So I mean with that type of tech that's running out there, people don't really have to worry about their size or their fit, to be honest.
Do you think people are reluctant to return products?
I think they just, the convenience of e-com then goes out the window, because I mean then
Yeah.
the time spent in the whole process kind of defeats the point of why they wanted to buy in the first place.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a big sort of barrier that we still need to overcome in terms of, it does take quite a bit to first have the actual product returned to you. You can't send the other product before you've actually inspected the goods when they return, otherwise, well, you can, but it's not best business practice to do that. So you have to first inspect the goods when they arrive, then you only send out the replacement pairs. So I mean then it takes a bit too long. So I mean that's kind of something we're trying to sort out, but a great initiative then is like the click and collect. We launched that as well straight after lockdown, which kind of marries the two, online and in-store, kind of together. Where in SA we got I think the second most malls in the world or something
Yes.
like that.
Yes.
So we're still very much like going to the mall is like a family thing. It's a weekend out. People take it sort of religiously to go
I was
to
there
the
on
mall.
Saturday, Etienne, and I think me and the whole of Pretoria was in Mainland. And I was just
Yeah,
like,
why would
they're
you
in my
do that?
pluckies and my short pants, and they were all dressed up. It looked like they're going to weddings, and people are taking selfies, and
The random photos.
yeah, it's still an outing. It's a massive
Yeah.
outing to
It's
go
a
to the
mall- it's
mall.
mall
It is
culture.
end of the month, and I think people come from all over the country
Yeah.
or the smaller cities to visit mainland. I
And
know
that's the
my
thing,
family
like-
It's
does.
a massive thing.
With click and collect, at least you can purchase something knowing that okay, it's not out of stock. When I arrive there, what I want is going to be there, but I can still feel it. I can still look at it. If I don't like it,
You
I
just
can
leave
still
it there, yeah, and you
exchange
can take it.
directly in store,
It's still
take it and go.
more of an instant gratification, which is what I think us South Africans are so used to. Is we want this, I give you my money and you give me my product, and I think
Yeah.
that's what click and collect kind of also symbolizes. It's this: if I go there, it's still mine and I can get it there. Whereas with delivery, it's this thought that you need to wait for your product. I think that's.
Do you integrate all your stores for click and collect?
Just local.
Local.
Yeah.
And did that take custom development from your side to do that? Or-
From us, we did a bit of a workaround because we have multiple systems within the company. So obviously, ideal would be to use Shopify Plus to kind of have, Shopify POS in all our stores. Everything's integrated. So with us, we did a bit of a workaround. So we used the Shopify plugin, and then all the admin work is a bit of a manual process, but it still works just fine for us.
But inventory management was then per store.
We did it in a sense that any click and collect that does happen, the sale is from online stock.
Okay.
So you replenish the stock
Yes,
after,
so
the fact.
Yeah, so it would just be online stock because inventory is a very
Difficult,
sensitive and
yeah.
difficult thing to manage. So we just did online stock only, and then when it gets to store and there is an exchange that takes place, it's just a simple addition and an exit from the local POS system. So for us, it was a bit of a, especially to train the store staff, is a bit of a mission. But I mean, we got it right at the end. But we prefer, for everyone that's watching, Shopify Plus is definitely the easier way to do it.
But I think they incorporated collection points now in the
Yes,
normal
they
plans
are, yeah.
after the fact. A bit late, but I think that could have helped quite a lot as well.
And then we've got a sort of a POS/stock management system on our retail side that we are kind of fully committed to. So even that kind of click and collect with multiple sort of warehousing points on our side, I mean, we just couldn't do it just because of our setup. It's not like because there's anything that's preventing us from doing it. It's just an internal thing.
Was that a big uptake on click and collect? You never offered click and collect before. It was just
No.
because of lockdown.
So I mean, we obviously try to focus on sort of omni-channel initiatives and
Yes.
stuff, just to try and get people also back to store, because people are a bit scared after the lockdown. Should we ever go back to store? Is it safe to go back to store? So at least that also helped to try and get the people back to be like, okay, Soviet does, adhere to the rules and regulations. I do get my hands sanitized. I do fill out a form. Everyone's socially distanced. So that helped us. And then it took a while to get going, but actually this previous month in Feb was kind of the highest month we've had with Click and Collect. So it's just sort of a building process where it's just, again, people need to try something first before they try it. So the more time it's there, the more you kind of just remind them about the option, then the more at ease they feel about it. So it wasn't like a initial
Boom.
Click and Collect is
Yeah.
awesome, but it did kind of take its time.
So, what do you think our biggest challenges will be for sort of the next step of e-commerce? So we've just overcome, I think, the first 2 waves. I think there's still some more COVID coming our way. I think we've experienced the biggest, growth in e-commerce that I think we even expected. So what sort of do you think is our next challenge going forward?
Well, I think from our side, first of all, not to expect the same year as last year. We saw about a 300% growth. So it's difficult from a management side, to compete with that. So I think that was a lot of the situation that we were in, the lockdown, all of that. I think the biggest thing from our side is just competition in an industry that is growing, that is enticing. You're going to get competitors that's going to be doing the same thing that you are. It's great for us as companies that e-commerce has grown, but it means more people are entering the market. But yeah, it keeps us on our toes. It makes sure that we offer value to our customers. Might it be uAfrica, might it be Soviet, and it keeps us, and I think in general, makes it exciting. But that's the main thing. I think making sure that you still add value to your customers, and that you kind of grow as the industry grows as well. So I think that's probably the biggest challenge that comes from this massive growth in 1 year.
I also think, people seeing that entrepreneurship is definitely a thing. People don't need to have a long process of opening up career accounts and to be able to ship and to have the whole process of shopping online. So payments is fairly easy now, and shipping is fairly easy now, and we've made it so that everybody can open up a store fairly easily. And I think that will continue to grow because omni-channel, as you mentioned, and e-commerce and retail everywhere is sort of where it is at. You need to be able to sell where your customers are. Shopify allows you, and WooCommerce allow you to sell on Instagram where the people are, on TikTok or wherever you are to sell. But it all needs to come to a central management point of view from Shopify or uAfrica to be able to ship it from a location and to be able to set that up. In the past, it was very, very difficult to set up a career account. You have to have credit checks. You have to have the buying power. And I think some people like uAfrica, what we try to do is we have that buying power to allow people to negotiate on their behalf, and sort of a term that Shopify is using is like arming the rebels, which I think is a really, really cool term.
I like that.
Yeah. I really like that.
I think for us it would be, we kind of sort of had an eye-opening last year. I think a lot of brands did, where it's, we get so caught up in being price sensitive and trying to beat the next person in either a promotion or, we say our product is higher quality, but at the end of the day, there's so many people you compete against. It's so difficult to kind of set yourself apart. So we've really tried and focused on, just what our brand stands for. So it's more of we try and focus on our why statement, why we exist instead of what we do and how we do it. So we're trying to focus a lot more on, even if there's a million products or options out there, which there are now, there's tons and tons of footwear options and fashion options, what's gonna set us apart from other brands, because it's almost impossible to stand out with quality anymore. If you look at, yes, price range does again have a big effect, but again, in every sort of price range there are tons of competitors in each different tax bracket or price bracket that you have there. So for us, it's just literally, do our customers resonate with what we stand for? So it's a slow process when it comes to branding and trying to have people resonate with what we stand for, but at least it's kind of driven us in the right direction, where everyone's now trying to do fast fashion everything couple months there's a new style. It's out cheaper. Everyone, you know, even the biggest brands manufacture in China. Everyone manufactures in China, so quality-wise is more or less the same as well. So it's just, you know, for us to try and stand out in that sense. And then it's just also because everyone's going on to e-com, we're obviously trying to branch out to be more international and that sort of thing. And being in South Africa, there's a lot of challenges that comes with that. So it's more for the big companies like the Shopify's, like a DHL or whatever, just to recognize South Africa as a proper e-com hub, so they can find more tailor-made solutions for what we have, especially like with payment gateways. Just as an example, you know, we don't have Apple Pay. Through Shopify, there's no Shopify payments that we can't do. We can't do Google Pay, Apple Pay, all of those things. Well, I mean, in any other Northern Hemisphere country, it's available. So for us, it's kind of just breaking down those kind of barriers so we can at least compete with the rest of the world.
As well,
There are definitely some unique challenges locally. Another thing that we saw as well is a lot of corporate companies had to reinvent themselves to be online and to sell online, and to take a step back and see that corporate is not everything, and physical retail stores is not everything. They have to adapt. It's sort of adapt or die at the moment.
I wanted to ask Ethan, because you mentioned it, like that initially Soviet, obviously they've got retail stores and online wasn't the thing, and then with lockdown, online kind of became one of the only options. Was there a mindset change from the business side, like from a management side, to realize, okay, online was always this little thing we're doing on the side?
Because that's always the difficult thing to
Was there really a change in that? Or?
So we still have, you know, quite a bit of opposition against online, but it's because we also, Soviet the brand caters to also wholesale customers. So I mean, we do sell on Zando, we sell on Takealot, we sell through multiple sort of resellers throughout the country. We sell in Edgar's, all of those type of guys. So as soon as there's sort of an e-com presence of Soviet the brand, we kind of upset a whole bunch of people in the whole chain. So from our side, it's a bit of a balancing act to try and grow online and while still keeping our current business happy and kind of going without losing major clients. So for us, you know, we just had to say the proof's in the pudding. So I mean, we've more than doubled our stuff every year since we started, and this year it looks more or less the same as well. We've, you know, more than doubled our business year on year. So for us, it's just, you know, the bigger we become, the less they can kind of ignore us. So we're just gonna keep on doing it.
So what is next for you, and what is next for e-commerce?
Okay, so from a feature point of view, during this time we got a lot of feature requests from all our customers, and I think we had to take that in, and we had to prioritize that. We're trying to build ourselves as a company and get all these features out, but we, being software as a service, we don't build features for one specific customer. So deciding on what to build next, we've got some very, very exciting features coming out in the next 2 or 3 months, trying to incorporate as many people as possible and trying to automate people's businesses as far as possible. From a technical point of view, I think there's a lot of scope of what we can do. And I think from a warehousing point of view, and from a fulfillment and shipping point of view, and from a returns point of view, especially from clothing, there's big strides that we can still make. From a collection and a drop-off point of view, there will be big changes this year. People needing to collect from lockers or from drop locations, what they call PUDO. I know the courier guy coined that term, but it is pick up and drop off points. So that's going to be a big change this year. Getting points where people can collect from one location, especially in security estates. It's a big thing in South Africa. People will start using that outside of estates because you need to make specific times to be able to do that. Remote working changed that because people were at home to be able to deliver to, but people don't want courier companies to always come into their estates for security reasons. I had a case where a courier company phoned me from my gate, and they didn't pitch for an hour because they had to drive around delivering other parcels. They just by chance phoned me. So I think that will change, having centralized points for couriers. And I don't think that will probably be owned by the couriers. That will probably be an independent company owning these drop-off points. As well as click and collect. People want to have choice, and people want to choose where they want to collect their parcels from. And I think there will be big changes in terms of that, in terms of tech as well, and shopping platforms integrating into those platforms. I think that's where big changes will be, and for us, we will focus on those areas.
Etienne, what do you think?
I think the future for Soviet is definitely just to, again, just try and enhance the local sort of market that we have now. So we're still pretty new on the e-com side. I mean, we're only 3 years on now from when we first started, so we're still pretty new. But for us, again, it's also just to provide our customers with as many options as possible. So for us, we also just want to build in a loyalty program that works for us. So I mean, a lot of the times we're pretty good at getting sort of the initial buy sorted out, where, you know, a lot of other places might struggle with that, but we have a bit of a challenge with returning customers. So for us, it's, again, our service is pretty top notch and all of those type of things, but just something as an initiative to bring people back is what we trying to sort out. That again works with our sort of multiple systems that we have in the company, which is always a challenge. So it's not like a simple plugin on Shopify, unfortunately. But hopefully one day, once all the retail stores are on Shopify, we can do that. And then it's also just to enhance sort of customer experience. I mean, that's another thing, just to set ourselves apart. I think, again, just to reiterate what I've been saying is, I mean, quality and price can only take you so far. So for us, it's, you know, trying to enhance the experience where, you know, we have sort of automated workflows through where we try and market directly to people, but based on the person that they are. So we don't want to sort of just, you know, do the shotgun approach where we just send mass emails and push promotion and push price or whatever. We really want to focus on each individual and make them feel special. And then another thing, I mean, through Shopify, we've obviously developed the app, so that's obviously just brought us back into that mobile space that we're quite strong in. And then also virtual reality AR stuff, which we're really trying to sort out, but again, it takes time to sort of work out those things, because it's quite a bit of, not in terms of integration and stuff, pretty easy with Shopify. Again, it's more the back end sort of stuff where we have to now, you know, take sort of 360-degree photos to make it work and that sort of thing. So I mean, for us, it's just a very cool, you know, thing to add. Anything that's technology involved, just something that makes us different is what we're trying to do. So VR and AR is kind of a thing that we're trying to do.
That's really cool.
And if we can match it to our actual sizing, because we've trialed it a little bit with footwear and stuff. So I mean, if we can match it so perfectly to our actual physical, then people can try on the shoes, you know, before they even purchase online, just virtually. So we're looking towards those sort of things, but we'll get there.
We also saw that technology can only get you so far, especially in countries like South Africa. We're the only country in the world that use a combination of suburbs and postal codes. So address validation for us is very, very hard, even with stuff like Google Maps. And that's where the business side comes in to a big extent, where you still have to follow up on parcels. And I think that's what we bring to the party as well, is that level of customer support, of assisting people, of getting those stuff. I would love to automate everything, but it's really not possible. And I think
humans are still involved.
Humans will always be needed, I think, in a country like South Africa, where there's we have a big base of informal settlements from shoppers. You mentioned before we got started that a big drive on mobile is happening as well. So addresses and address validation is a big drive for us. In North America, it's a lot easier, and for us it's a challenge.
And a big thing, I think, just coupling with sort of our regional areas, is it'll make sense for the courier company to charge more to send to a regional area, but you know, it's kind of wrong side up with the actual consumer, because I mean, the regional guys more often than not they have less money than sort of your local or national sort of located people. So I mean, to try and make that courier cost a bit cheaper would help a lot, especially with us. We cater to sort of a lower income demographic, mid to lower income. So I mean, to charge what we charge for regional deliveries for someone that does stay in a regional area just doesn't really, you know, tie up that well. And then also, you know, we do have a threshold where we offer free delivery and that type of thing, but that threshold's often or times it's too high for those type of consumers. So just to try and involve the lower demographic a lot more would probably be...
Have you seen a big uptake in regional shipments?
We have, especially if we have something that they really want, then they'll take the pay flex option, which is, you know, that pay in installments, and then they'll be fine with paying, you know, the courier rate, because then they're also in effect paying that off in installments.
Correct, you're paying for the total amount.
So we've seen an uptake in that, but a lot of times we've seen people, you know, just decide not to buy from the store, online store, and go to a physical because of that courier charge to a regional. So they'll rather wait for their sort of once a month visit to the big mall that's in Joburg or in Pretoria, and then they'll buy what they want.
So you would say that customers are still very, very sensitive to shipping fees as well?
Yeah.
We've seen that regional areas have picked up so much that some regional areas have become cheaper and become main centers as well over time, because e-commerce is building those centers to be more shipment.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's a lot of regional areas across the countries that will never reach it, like
I think that's where, like, for us as a business, that's precisely where my challenge lies, or uAfrica's challenge, to be able to solve that kind of problem for a customer, so that we can come with a solution to say, okay, you've got a, you know, click and collect, or where there's not a retail where you could just go and collect at a certain store or something like that, where you can give that consumer more options. And I think that's where our challenge lies, is that kind of example, is a customer like you guys saying that, and when we can go and say, okay, how can we make your lives easier? Because for us it's maybe, you know, we can do it once and we can offer it to a lot of customers. So I think that is where, and the combination from a tech side and an integration side and a support side is what can lead you to make it easier.
I think another spin-off of that is where you guys are privileged is it's small packages and it's light packages. There's a lot of people selling bigger stuff, selling furniture, and then it becomes really heavy stuff and big volumetric stuff. That becomes a big problem, especially if you're going to regional areas. That's a nightmare.
It's that too expensive actually, like it's not even.
We have a lot of customers, and all the people in apparel and shoes, it's usually small things that can fit into a sleeve. And that's easy and a lot cheaper to ship.
But you do have returns then?
Yes.
Of course.
Where returns is the
but when you start getting to 10 kilograms and more, it's a nightmare. It really becomes very, very expensive.
I think another thing is also just sort of because of those regional customers, they are behind in terms of what they have availability to. So a lot of the times it's also with returns, we'd sometimes struggle with, you know, we'd send them a label, for example, to kind of have ready for the courier. And then that in itself, if they don't have those facilities to print a label, then there's a whole admin process, you know, uAfrica would have to go through and the courier companies would have to go through to make it happen. And then it's also just through payments again, like a lot of the people don't have, you know, the sort of online banking options. And I don't think, I mean, that's something we'll never solve, I don't think, from an e-com side, but more in terms of a socio-economic side. That's definitely something once we sort out, you know, that the general amount of the population has an online banking platform, has the ability to do EFTs, that sort of thing, then I think we'll see a lot more uptake in sales just generally.
Returns is a big thing that can be solved in our country, and I think we can make that better. And that's definitely something we're working on quite hard to do.
Yeah, we've literally got one person hired just to look after customer service and returns. So I mean, it's you know, it's admin and it's time consuming.
So customer relationship is so important these days. You have to focus on the customer, like because they have choice. They are spoiled for choice at the moment, and if you don't do that relationship building, it's quite hard. I just wanted to touch on marketing as well. What do you guys do currently? Is it only digital marketing, or is there offline marketing as well?
We do 90% digital.
Okay.
We've switched completely. Especially it's all in-house now. We used to kind of outsource agencies and things to do it for us, but they just, to be honest, overpriced for what they give. So we've brought everything in-house, and we do pretty well. I mean, with our digital marketing, we stick to the basics. We'll just do Facebook Business and the whole Google suite, from search to shopping to YouTube and display ads. And then every now and then we'll sort of buy digital space from a magazine or a Media 24,
Okay.
whatever it may be, but we don't do it all that often. But I mean, digital's definitely the way everything's going.
Do you guys
And
use
it's staying.
influencers or not at all?
We heavy on our influencers.
Okay.
It's a focus for 2021. 2020, we trialed it towards the end of the year, but it was also a little bit difficult with our seasons got messed up and everything.
Okay.
So this year there's a big push from our side, and we got a lot of new things in store for 2021. We have sort of a ongoing influencer program where we use more the micro and nano influencers rather than like
Okay.
a blue tick celebrity person.
Yes.
And we've just seen results, actual sales from the nano and micros a lot more than from a big celeb. So we're just going to continue with that, and then it's again more that brand association where we kind of involving someone that was an influencer of ours, where she's now going to be a in-house blogger / stylist. She's going to have
Brand
a
ambassador.
YouTube channel for
Oh,
us
wow.
and everything.
That's
So
really cool.
and then we're also collabing on sort of a single, so it's a song track where again we want to be sort of one of the first to be able to collab on a song as a brand. I don't think there's many that do it.
As a
So-
product placement or like physical advertising as well.
Just physical, it's a good PR exercise for us. I
Mm.
mean, we've kind of taken an up and coming guy that's really talented but doesn't have the right platform to be able to grow. So I mean, we've kind of collabed with him on a song that, you know, matches his brand and our brand. And then it's fully commercial, so it's going to be on Spotify and iTunes and all of those places, hopefully on radio. So again, it's more that sort of community marketing that we're focusing on more than this generic, you know, splash approach.
Yeah.
Try and have 1 million people see us, but not many buy from us doesn't make sense for us anymore. Especially, you know, our budget stayed the same and even shrinked a little bit. So, you know, we're trying to make the most with what we have, and that's looking after our customers pretty much.
That's very cool. Right, so my final question for you guys is, so I was thinking about it the other day, and I thought to myself, when I started at uAfrica 2 years ago, the last thing that I expected was a pandemic. It's the last.
Yeah, no.
It's nothing that you ever thought was ever going to happen and ever going to disrupt your lives. So
Apart from movies.
yeah, apart from movies. But if you could now chat to somebody who's just starting out and give them advice on how to future-proof and pandemic-proof their businesses, what advice would you give them?
For me, cash flow. Nobody saw this coming, and a lot of businesses were caught up because they didn't have cash flow during the lockdown period. That's the biggest issue for me, where a lot of customers went under. Embracing technology. I'm a technologist, so I love automating things, and there was a lot of manual intervention, having a lot of staff doing a lot of things manually, where people got caught up. A lot of processes could have been automated and could have been made easier over the time, and a lot of businesses were not able to transition to a local delivery network or to a online business. People selling physical goods, and it's sad to say, but it's older people embracing this physical contact of not going e-commerce, where they had the cash flow to buy a bakkie and deliver stuff locally. They could have created that local delivery network while they still had the cash flow, but they try and see this out in the 3 weeks that we had lockdown. It became 6 weeks, and a lot of people went under because they couldn't embrace technology in that sense. So having the cash flow to be able to maneuver and pivot your business, because people didn't pivot. People were not adaptive to change, and they were resilient to that. They just resisted that, and that's a problem. So
But it's also because they're not comfortable with tech, right?
of course.
I mean,
They
you
can't
are
embrace it.
comfortable with technology, so I'm probably one of the less comfortable people when it comes to technology in our whole company, and it's quite interesting to see. So obviously, I've improved a lot, but there's people that it's not that the intent is not there, but they're physically scared and they don't know. And if they don't know, they don't feel confident, and if they're not confident, they say, okay, let me rather not try.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, I agree with Jaco, definitely.
Just like we said with digital advertising, it is so
Mm.
easy. It is so easy to set a lifetime budget on Facebook with an ad, running, selling your products online. It's so easy creating a local delivery network, setting up all these things, but they are scared.
Yeah.
And a lot of businesses went under because they couldn't change. I don't know
Yeah.
what you saw.
For me, I would give advice to kind of test the product first, which is a big thing. A lot of people, especially in SA, if it's not, we import a ton of stuff. So I mean, just that kind of investment of, bringing in stock initially is already a big thing for a small person just trying to start something. So I mean, an easy step is drop shipping if you want to just become familiar with the tech as well and just kind of test out your product. A drop shipping sort of solution would kind of work for most people. And then it's also, if you are again wanting to test, you can always, what people try and do again without investing into their stock straight away, is they'll just increase their lead times a little bit by a couple weeks. And yes, it's not ideal, but I mean, people will understand, especially under sort of, like we say, if there's a COVID, another
Lockdown.
hard
conditions.
lockdown that happens, you're kind of forced to have that kind of long break between, let's say we go into stage 5 and it's a non-essential item, then it is going to be 3 to 4 weeks lead time anyway. So it's a good time to test your product, and I mean, if it doesn't sell, then fine, you haven't bought actual stock. But if it has, then you still have enough time to go and invest and buy into a proper, stock holding that you can, use afterwards. And then it'll probably be to be very careful about what you're selling. A lot of things are flash in the pan type of vibes, which we've spoken about, where if you're selling a mask, for example, those first 3 months in lockdown, you'd be making millions, and then you scale quickly into a full-on warehouse, a full delivery team, admin, support staff, and then in a few months it just goes
No
flat.
demand,
So
yeah.
rather take your time and grow slowly.
And find something unique as well.
Give any advice to new companies to future-proof and pandemic-proof their business?
Okay, so I think the one thing that I would say is, looking back, is it's just employing the right people. Because where you have to adapt so quickly and change so quickly, if you've got the right people in your team, it makes it a lot easier. So I think that is really something that we were lucky that we did right. We've always been kind of pedantic of who we employ, making sure it's a culture fit. Because I do think, especially with the remote working, it quite quickly showed the bad apples, or it's in a situation where you can see the people that doesn't fit. Luckily, we didn't really have that. But I do think people should maybe spend a little bit more time making sure that they employ the right people. And I think that is why we were able to kind of have that level of growth and still being able to give the good customer support and still being able to keep the brand loyalty and still being able to do what we do, is because we've got tech, great tech, but we've also employed the right people to facilitate.
Well, that's a very important point you're making about culture. I mean, a company can't create culture, the people create a culture.
Yeah.
And hiring the right people and getting the right people on board. And I heard a quote saying that the culture is not what you see, it is what people talk about when you are not around, what they talk about the company. And I think that's vital, what we created, having good staff and having good people. We still struggle to find people, and we're really looking for good tech people and good engineers to join our team. But it's hard to find, and it's hard to find a skillful person that's also a culture fit.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes. We can't just build a factory, we need to build a family of taking this forward.
Yeah.
That's vital. So we'll continue to do that, I think.
Cool. Well, thank you to the three of you for your time.
Thank you.
It's always the best talking about e-commerce. I love it. And I think we all did a pretty good job of surviving what was probably the craziest year that I've ever experienced.
No.
So
It's exactly 1 year now.
yes, actually.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sure.
So it's a 1 year anniversary.
But here's to hoping that 2021 goes a little bit better, that the country suffers a little bit less, and that the growth of e-commerce just keeps going up.
Cool.
Cheers.
Cheers, everybody.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks, Etienne.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Thanks, Dan, for having us.
The shading on my face is fine.
Perfect.
Okay, just count us in. Whatever.
Billy, what position was I in?
Doesn't matter. If there's a slight change, it's
Whatever makes you feel
We'll add
comfortable.
an ad break.
With your milk.
Yes.
And cut.
Cool.
So tired now.
Yeah.
What was the question again?
Bye.